Hello and welcome back to Total War Warhammer 2 and to Salty Studios. I am the Heir of Carthage and I appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to have a fun battle for you. I have had some videos recently where we took a look at the missile cavalry of the Empire in Total War Warhammer 2. More specifically, I say missile cavalry, we also looked at the handgunners. So we looked at handgunners versus outriders versus war wagons. And I talked to you a little bit about how those three units compared to each other, and in the end we reached the determination that the best for total damage over the course of a long battle if the unit doesn't die is the handgunners, the best for outputting the damage the fastest was the outriders, and the best in terms of survivability was the war wagons. And as a result of that video, we had some interesting comments. A lot of people still just really prefer the outriders and think the outriders are the best. And I tend to agree. I think there's a lot of situations where the outriders are the best. There are some situations where the handgunners are the best. Many people still just think war wagons aren't a viable unit. And maybe they're not. I don't know. But I've got a replay for you. We're going to take a look at it. And let's see what you think once you've watched this. So we're going to switch on over here to the Void of Hellfin. And you all are going to see Zero leading the Empire. And yes, with 3 war wagons up against Crown of Feather, who's playing as Teclis and the High Elves. Now, Teclis, of course, is going to have nets and healing. He's going to be a very capable lord. And then there's a Fire Mage as well, which is going to add in Fireball, potentially piercing bolts of burning, Sword of Flaming Ruin. There's going to be Shadow Warriors up front for the High Elves, providing a nice 180-degree range. So it's going to give the High Elves some very nice range. Behind them, they've got a couple of Spearmen, 3 Spearmen, and then 2 more in a back line. There are a Silver Helm with shields on either flank. Then over here in the woods, there is another Silver Helm with shield. So that is the High Elf army. As far as the Empire armies, you have the 3 wagons I mentioned, and look how good these wagons are going to be for the initial skirmishing here. They won't outrange the Shadow Warriors. Watch what happens when the Shadow Warriors open fire. Ton of damage. So I want to stop it right here. Look how many hit points the war wagons lost. And just imagine how much worse this would be if they didn't have the armor. So these are high armor, and that's a good thing because Shadow Warriors are not particularly armor-piercing. And you can see how much hit points. So imagine how many unit models may have died here had you had an Outrider unit in the place of this War Wagon. Once those models die, they cannot come back. They can't be resurrected. They are lost, their ammunition is lost, and their damage potential is lost. Not to mention, they can't fire while retreating. Now that I've said that, let's hit play here, and let's see how Zero chooses to use these war wagons. He comes under fire. You're going to see him trying to get a little shifty here, do some dodging, and he still hasn't lost a unit model, hasn't lost any capability from a missile standpoint. None of the men in the wagons are dead. The wagons aren't dead. The men in the wagons don't count as unit models even. You can see here 3 is what's listed. Look at that, almost half hit points lost, not a single model dead, and then they get hit with a regrowth off the Jade Wizard. Let's take a look at the rest of the Empire army here. We got a Sigmar Sons Swordman, which will provide a nice unbreakable spot of infantry. There are 3 other swordsmen. There are 2 Demigryph Knights with halberds to support the wagons, no doubt, from potential dragons, silver helms, dragon princes, all that kind of stuff. There's 2 great cannons, which are providing very punishing range support here. You can see this one here. I think the chevron was probably put on it prior to the battle, though I could be wrong. You can see Teclis moving forward. He really wants to net Volkmar. He's got him with the Scroll of Hoeth, which is going to make his abilities go slow. But look how much damage Teclis takes from the wagons. There's 3 wagons able to pick at him, basically at any given time. Now, the Silver Helms have not pushed up to support yet. I'm a little surprised not to see them up here to play a little bit of cat and mouse. And you can see Volkmar getting netted. It won't really matter too much because, again, he's a single entity, and he's going to heal back most of those hit points. Now, Teclis can heal a lot, too. He's got his Potion of Cheroi with him. He does have access to regrowth as well, I believe. I don't know if he's brought it with him because he's also got the Mage of Fire. And there's going to be a lot of magic recharge here, too, because the Fire Mage also has the Channeling Staff and the Book of Hoeth. So you're going to see a lot of potential magic here from the High Elves. And they are picking away with their Shadow Warriors, trying to get these war wagons off them. If they did bring up the Silver Helms, the Silver Helms wouldn't be able to get to the war wagons. They're defended by Demigryph Knights, and there's cannons there that can shoot at them as well. So this is a pretty interesting army that's been chosen here by Zero, and so far it's done pretty well. Look at that. The Fire Mage actually had a what do you call it, a miscast, and it took a ton of damage in the process of casting that fireball and routed, but the fireball did cause a lot of damage to the Jade Wizard, who has been healing these wagons, and the wagons have been very effective at dealing damage to the High Elf army. Now, they'll be pretty bad at doing anything meaningful to the spears, or for that matter, even to the Shadow Warriors, but look at the damage they did to the Mage and to Teclis. That's huge, that's critical, and it's forcing the High Elves forward, and now they have to come on an assault. This is going to bring them even closer to the Empire cannons, which have now racked up some good kills and some experience, and you can see that they're getting it from hitting the Silver Helms. So it's a very nice target for the cannons. It's a large target, very viable. Look at this, Volkmar is being used to kind of mire enemy troops. He's great at basically busting up blobs, and you kind of have to blob to kill him. And if you blob to kill him, you die. Look at this over here. You had a wagon caught by both Silverhelms and Spearmen, and look how slowly the damage is dished to them. There's going to be plenty of time to potentially react here before any major damage is taken. Look, here comes the Demigryph Knights coming to bail these guys out. We're going to see a fiery convocation here from Teclis, intended for the Sigmar Sons, but it's going to miss them and actually rip through one of his own spearmen. So Teclis with a little bit of High Elf fratricide there. Something that Malekith and Marathi would probably approve of, since they're big Slaneshi cultist. But nonetheless, we'll see here. Sigmar Sons is going to do a great job of being able to hold the center, and there's not a whole lot that the High Elves can do about it. And they're going to go ahead and just admit defeat. They've been outpicked here, and they're not going to be able to win this battle. They just don't have the troops to do it. Now, some of you probably would have preferred to see that battle played to the end. I like to play those ones to the end, but I don't really think it's bad for Crown of Feather to go ahead and throw in the towel there. It's fine. Like, you can do that. I think it's a lot of people's choice to fight all the way to the end. But I don't think anybody should be giving Crown of Feather a big deal. He was going to lose that battle. He had lost his support with the Fire Mage. He had almost lost Teclis. His Silver Helms were being shut down, and they were getting almost no kills. The Shadow Warriors were not providing a whole lot of damage value. I mean, they were starting to get some damage, but they were also near low on ammo. He didn't have a way to deal with the Demigryphs, unless he would have been able to focus fire them with the Shadow Warriors. It just was not going well for the High Elves. And I think this is a good example of the wagons in a niche, right? In this particular battle, yeah, in this particular battle, the High Elves just did not have an answer to these War Wagons. The War Wagons having decent armor and being a low model count requires you to have some very nice AP missiles or some magic that is pretty good at killing off unit models, and the High Elves just weren't prepared for this. Silver Helms do not pierce armor, and although they would defeat a War Wagon if they got it in a 1v1, it takes a while for them to cut through it. Because they just don't deal that damage. And you saw that even the War Wagon that was caught. So some of you may be wondering, like, when would survivability be more worth it than just being able to output that damage quickly? Well, here, this was a good example. And if you look at the War Wagons, they didn't get, like, a ton of damage value here because the targets they were shooting, Teclis and the Fire Mage, are not supremely expensive. Not in the configuration that we saw them here, at least. But they did some nice damage, and they still have all their hit points, and they still had most of their ammo. That survivability was huge. Basically, whenever all the Shadow Warriors dumped their ammunition into the War Wagons, and then that Jade Wizard cranked out a regrowth, that may as well have been the Jade Wizard using a spell that takes away ammunition from the Shadow Warriors. I mean, it has the same impact because of that survivability. So this does take some micro. Zero had to micromanage this army, and with some mistakes of micro, it could have gone south very quickly, but he did a nice job. And Crown of Feather, I don't think his army pick is unrealistic. You're trying to net key Empire units, kill them with your archers. You have some spearmen for defense because, quite honestly, Empire infantry is not that threatening. Multiple heavy cavalry to try and have some mobility. I mean, could there be better High Elf picks against the Empire? Probably. I'm not particularly great with the High Elves against the Empire, and I think that the picks here by Zero were very well thought out. Ranged AP damage with the cannons that forces the High Elves into an engagement, and the High Elves cannot have better range. And then the War Wagons are picking at single entity targets and forcing the engagement forward, at which point the Demigryphs step in to defend, and Volkmar can help mire and defeat blobs of infantry. I think it's pretty well chosen. Anyway, I thought you all might enjoy this one. I know I enjoyed it, and I think Zero here gave us a good example of how War Wagons can be viably used in a competitive multiplayer match. And I think this was well shown. So again, I'm not sitting here saying that War Wagons are like amazing. They're the best unit that the Empire has. You should always pick War Wagons. No, I'm not advocating that. They have a niche, and they are good in that niche when they're used properly. And so I think that some people just underestimate them because on paper, and remember when I did that testing, those were all idealized scenarios, weren't they, right? None of the units that I were testing were taking damage in return, and think about that. Had Outriders been chosen here by Zero, could he have still won the battle? Sure, he might have possibly still won the battle, but what happens to an Outrider unit when it gets caught by a unit of Silverhelms in a charge? Does it survive? Sure doesn't. What happens to a unit of Outriders when it takes a volley off of 4 Shadow Warriors? Does it survive? Sure doesn't. You know what I mean? And so there is a reason why the War Wagons were able to be successful here, whereas the Outriders could have been defeated a little more easily. The Outriders also could not have fired while retreating away from the High Elf target. So again, just food for thought. I'm not saying that War Wagons are always the best pick, but some people out there think War Wagons are totally useless, and they are wrong. They do have a niche. They fit that niche when used properly. It may not suit your play style, and so you may find that you don't ever choose to use them, and that is the case with me with a lot of different types of armies. I cannot play them well, and so I still don't pick them even though I know they're viable, because I cannot make them viable. But I think to argue that War Wagons aren't viable in general is probably clearly misguided, and they definitely do have a purpose. Anyway, thank you to Zero for sending this in. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure and hit that like button. If you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to be having more videos like this. There's still lots of battles to be had in Warhammer 2, and Warhammer 3 is coming early next year, hopefully, without any delays. And we will see some more interesting battles. We've just gotten to see the Grand Cathay roster, a lot of other interesting stuff from them. So hope to see you all soon. HeirofCarthage, signing out for now.